Welcome back. You're watching Broadcast Beat, and I'm Deborah Kaufman, your moderator. We are broadcasting, or should I say streaming, from the floor of the 2017 annual conference and exhibition of the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. So I have with me right now Forrest Sussman, who's Vice President of Sales at a company called Lawo. It's spelled L-A-W-O, but pronounced Lawo.
Yes.
Now, I have seen this name everywhere for a long time, but I really don't know much about the company. Why don't we start off, Forrest, with you telling me a little bit about the company?
Sure. So, yes, it is pronounced Lawo, rhymes with Bravo. We are based in German, hence the pronunciation of L-A-W-O in English. We're about a 50-year-old company. We're owned by Philip Lawo, his father started the company, and we're an audio company. Back in the 1970s, analog audio consoles, made the transition to digital audio in the 80s, and then started growing the company internationally at about that time as well. So Philip took over running the company around 15 years ago or so, 17 years ago, and now we have a presence all over the world, including the US. So we've been a US entity for about 4 years or so, and I've been with the company almost that long, joining us one of the single-digit employees in the US.
Interesting. All right. So, and now it's a Philips company, it sounds like.
Well, Philip Lawo owns the company.
Right. Okay.
So Lawo. So what's nice about Lawo is we're very flat. We're very agile. We don't have shareholders. If we need to go do something, Philip will say, "Okay, why are we doing it?" And we explain it, and he says, "Sounds like a good idea." If it's the right thing to do for the customer, we do that. We can take the long view on things. And Philip wants us to make sure that we're good vendors and good partners to people.
So in other words, the company is small enough to be really agile, but big enough to, have the customer support and everything.
We do, and that's what we've done in the past several years in the U.S. is hire a lot of support and service people to kind of grow the company that way.
Okay.
So even though we're a worldwide entity, we want to make sure we had the people and the parts and the skill sets here to support the U.S. broadcast market.
Interesting. Okay. So I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about control in a broadcast facility.
Sure.
So why is that an important topic now in 2017?
So control is kind of everything going forward. It used to be that you would buy a vendor-specific solution for control, let's say a routing switcher, and you would buy that vendor control system for that router, and that's all it did. And that was a great solution, and it did exactly what you needed to do. But now there are all these disparate control elements in a facility. And now as we move into IP, there's a lot more things to control, including IP switches, edge devices, and legacy gear, meaning SD, HDI gear, that was never going to go away. So Lawo purchased a company called LSB a couple years ago. The product is VSM, which stands for Virtual Studio Manager. It's a third-party agnostic control system. So it is an overarching control system that has 300-400 different protocols. We control IP switches natively, and we can control legacy gear in a facility like naturally.
It's like a universal remote.
It is. It exactly is.
Because it does, the way you were describing control in the facility, it makes it sound horrendously complicated. I just had this vision of like routers.
So
and,
it very much is the remote control. If you look at that, because on your desk, on your TV stand, right, you're going to have a TiVo remote and your Apple TV remote and your sound remote. What VSM does is take all those into one control layer, which can be a customized GUI or hardware solution. So now the customer gets exactly what they want, as opposed to different and disparate control systems controlling different control layers and different pieces of gear. You can now have one control system that does everything. And as the underlying technology changes over the years, which it will as technology matures, then the control system stays exactly the same. And from the operation point of view, it's the same operation layer and same interface. So now if a facility buys into this, they train their operators once, and then it works forever for them.
Right, so you're kind of, I hate to say it, but kind of idiot-proofing the facility in a way, right? People can't easily make mistakes.
Exactly, and it becomes what you want it to be for you. And it could have different looks and feels. So, for instance, we're doing work with NBC Olympics. In Rio.
Talk about that. That's interesting.
So in Rio, they replaced an existing control system with a VSM system. So we controlled the router, We controlled tally, we controlled monitor walls and other things from hardware and software stations, and we had 100 different kind of GUIs that NBC would be able to drive from a tech manager level to producer level, so you can change what the interface is depending upon what the functionality is needed. It's not one size fits all anymore.
Well, it sounds, the complicated part to me, and please shed some light on this, is it sounds like getting this set up to work must take forever and must be really complicated.
Well, it's a little bit, it's maybe one day less than forever, but it definitely is a service engagement. So the success that we've had with the customers is someone who comes in and understands what are they trying to do, can articulate the workflow they're trying to go at. We come back with some templates, we have some kits and building blocks that they can choose from, and then we work with the customer in a collaborative way to put that together.
Right. Okay, so it's not something you just literally plug into the wall.
It's not.
Is it software connections then with all the different controllers?
It's software and hardware, depending upon the devices.
Okay.
So more modern devices may have an established API. It's software. But legacy devices that still don't have maybe a network API, maybe they have an old GPI or an old serial connection, we have devices that translate from network interface back to a legacy interface. So we can kind of cover all the different devices, but from the operations point of view, it looks the same.
And you're going to find yourself in broadcast facilities, or what about things like post-production houses or other kinds of facilities?
So the interesting thing is we're finding the acceptance rate is much higher in a lot of the kind of new age video places, the new media places. For instance, Google YouTube, Amazon in New York.
Interesting. Okay.
Also at 30 Rock. I think if you look around, you'll see it's not one size fits all, and people are trying to solve a problem. In Europe, we are probably in 95% of all the OB vans because, and this is how the company started, you would walk in and be different control systems everywhere, and every truck operated differently.
Right.
Now you walk into it and you know exactly what you're going to get. This is the same control system, the same interface, no matter what the gear is.
Now I'm kind of interested that you said some of these new media companies like Amazon and what have you have them. I would think that everything there would just be, there is no legacy. It's all digital. I mean, why do they need a kind of a master controller?
Because again, you're going to have different equipment depending upon the facility. Whether it's different audio boards, different lighting, different multi-viewers, monitor walls, video switchers, and that's okay. So it allows you to pick best of breed.
I see. Okay.
But it allows us to then craft a solution, a nice interface for that customer, and then grow with it in the future. Because you can do it remotely as well. You don't have to be sitting at that desktop to control it. It can be done somewhere else over a network.
Interesting. And so I'm curious as to what, when you go into facilities, what percentage are they all, using so many disparate everythings that it's very hard to?
I think, and this is some of the way that things work in our industry. We have a mature industry in a lot of ways.
We do.
We have a lot of legacy in our industry. We have a lot of trained people who have a lot of experience doing things for 50 years a certain way. I think going forward, we have to mature as an industry in terms of growing to this new IP structure, interfaces. My son, who's 22, would be as comfortable with a touchscreen interface more than having to physically touch a button.
Right.
And I think that's the generation now that we have to look forward to coming up in our business.
Of course, I think with Grass Valley, all the switchers, those big switchers.
Well, my legacy is with Grass Valley. I grew up with Grass Valley. I worked there for many years. It's a great interface. It's the industry standard for provision mixers. But now if you just want to mix that with some other things and do multiple functions and establish a different workflow, this work control starts really coming into play.
So how is, we've been talking today with other guests about IP media, IP networks. How is IP going to really change what you do and change, is your product going to become more important?
Well, I think it allowed us to grow up as a company. If you knew Lawo, you knew us as an audio company. And we are number one, number two manufacturer of audio consoles worldwide. Our customers here in the US are ESPN, NBC, Telemundo, Golf Channel, Turner Sports.
So you've made some pretty amazing inroads in the US market, despite the fact you haven't been here that long.
That's true. That's true. So we've done really, really well. I think the challenge, for industry now is moving, to IP. And I think, for us, it gave us an opportunity because coming into it, we didn't make SDI routers or legacy video routers, but now we can rely upon the IT industry, people like Arista and Cisco, who build these incredible gigabit bandwidth data switches that move, thousands of bits of data a second, and that we use that now as our backbone. So our control system, VSM, controls those as a legacy video router.
So are you partnered with Cisco then? Is that a...
We do work with Cisco and Arista,
okay.
and we're not agnostic. We are basically agnostic when it comes to switches. We've done a lot of projects with both those companies, and developed APIs and worked with them very, very closely. So Cisco has DCNM, a very, very good interface, robust interface they've been developing over the past year. And Arista has their API interface, and that allows us to do deterministic switching, flow control, bandwidth management, which is what the broadcast industry needs.
Right.
And so for us, coming in, we did not have a horse in the game. You could buy a very, very good router from any number of companies, and it'll work fine. But going forward, why would you buy an SDI router anymore? You don't need to.
No, that's not going to happen.
But going forward, you probably still have to use that router for everyday use for a long, long time. As long as I'm going to still be working in this business. Stuff is never going to go away. Broadcasters are going to get the last ounce of life out of every piece of equipment in the facility. But going forward, you need to produce more and more content and be more flexible, and IP really is the only way to get there. So what we do at VSM is we can control an IP router, we can control the edge devices and all the legacy gear, and make it seamless to operations.
So in other words, it sounds like what you're saying is for people who are fearful of the transition to IP, that this is a way of kind of smoothing over the bumps?
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And so our industry really is at that disruption point. Everybody knows they need to go IP. Some of the tools are still being developed. There's a lot of projects that are being produced now and going fully IP facilities, but there's a lot of people still waiting on the sidelines to see what's next.
Absolutely, and we've heard how SMPTE has just standardized a few of the, the regulations around IP networks. So are you actually working on any IP network projects at the moment?
Yeah, and in fact, we're doing a very, very, very large one in Australia. It's a Fox NEP project. It's unique in Australia because the geography is so vast. And what happens there is the two primary hubs are Sydney and Melbourne, of course, but there's a lot of geography around Brisbane and all the other cities in Australia. So the telco provided very, very, very large pipes to connect all the cities, and NEP facilities are servicing a Fox account, and it's all virtualized. So basically it's built around our new video matrix platform, VSM, and allows the control to be anywhere around kind of the ring. And the big facilities in Sydney and Melbourne have the variety of all the equipment. And they are becoming backups for each other, but I could be in Brisbane and log onto the equipment in Melbourne, and no one would know the difference.
That's amazing. Well, that's kind of the promise of IP, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So we're also doing a lot of work with Fox and with NBC. And again, on the IP front, so NBC for the first time did commentary at home in Rio. So what that means is all the off-tube channels, the stuff that's not on the primary NBC network feed, but the stuff on all the cable networks that they do have, is now produced out of Stamford, Connecticut. So all the sports are brought back live. We have an audio over IP commentary system that's also used in the Olympics in the stadiums. And the announcers sit in broadcast booths in Stamford, Connecticut, and voice over the sport as it comes in live. And so we'll do that again with NBC for Korea, and in Korea as well with some commentary systems.
I mean, it seems like working with the Olympics has got to be a pretty big calling card for you guys.
We're very fortunate and very humbled to be able to partner with OBS and HBS. We work very hard at that. We take the relationship very, very seriously. We provide all the audio infrastructure for Olympics, which again is great. And they trust us. So I think we're uniquely positioned to be able to do that for a lot of customers. And the same thing now with Fox Sports for World Cup. So the same thing. HBS is host broadcasting, which produces all of the FIFA World Cup services. We partner with them to provide a lot of the audio and audio commentary systems. And so now we're working with Fox again on some remote kits So next year in Russia, you'll see a lot of Lawo gear, kind of everywhere.
So I'm foreseeing that one day in the not too distant future, Lawo will be a household name.
It should be. You'll see it on your remote.
So if we visit the booth, you have a booth here today?
Yes, we do.
And what am I going to see if I go to the booth?
You have, of course, VSM. You have some of our remote kit capabilities, and we can kind of walk through what we do in terms of controlling IP streams and IP networking.
Great, excellent. Well, I encourage all of our viewers to go check it out.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.